As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road, let's get my action.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio. Today we have a special guest host in the seat for Tom, Donald McAulay. All right, it's all yours, Donald.
Good morning. This is Donald McAulay Jr., second time on the show, given the great opportunity to fill in for Tom today. So I want to keep with the tradition that Tom's doing and us bringing good content and good quality to the program, but also bringing good guests to the show. And today, with my pleasure, I was able to bring someone in my cohort, someone close to me, someone part of the UConn family, Michael Mallery. I could go through his full bio. I know radio is his thing, so I'm going to let him give his bio, and we're going to kind of jump in with some content.
Awesome. So I'm excited. It's definitely an honor to be here in New Haven. I'm definitely honored to be here in New Haven. It's a blessing to be here to talk about a lot of different things, a lot of the isms as it pertains to the academy. You know, a little bit about myself, Michael Mallery, born and raised down south, 337 from Louisiana, matriculated up here to New England as I've began a lot of my just academic research, and a lot of it is started with my own personal organization. I'm So Educated, so I founded this educational consultant company, and essentially what I want to do is to go into classrooms for the secondary higher ed institutions and help students connect the dots to their educational purpose, and more so engage in critical pedagogy, essentially getting them to think outside the box, but also getting them to think about, you know, where they are, where they want to be, and ultimately what are some of those, you know, micro or more so macro level, you know, forces out there in the world that oftentimes, due to being in social media or being in some of these micro level systems, they don't really see the bigger picture of how institutions work and how these things work. So I was able to travel the world. I was known for, you know, Jay-Z and Kanye back in the day. I went on tour with the Watch the Throne tour. So I created the Respect the Swag tour, Students with Academic Goals. So a lot of people who know me from an oratory perspective, I created Students with Academic Goals program that brings swagger to the classroom, but also enhances and educates students on a multitude of things. And just a little bit about myself, third year in the Learning Leadership Ed Policy program at the University of Connecticut. You know, as Mr. McAulay stated, he's one of the individuals that's with me in the fight as we continue to not only fight in the classroom, but also, you know, challenge each other to be better, to ultimately impact and inspire our community. So it's an honor to be here. We can talk about whatever, and we're just going to make this a very healthy discussion about all things, everything.
So we normally do this a lot. So we obviously teach a couple classes together. We've worked together. And so one of the things that we kind of talk about a lot is just what it's like to be in a PhD program and what the journey is like, and it's such a amazing thing for us to have this opportunity. We obviously are the minorities in this population in terms of individuals that are seeking high level degrees in higher ed. And so I wanted to kind of ask you, like, I mean, I know we talk about it, but what's it like being in the academy or working through the academy?
Well, as most people know, I'm in the academy, but not of the academy. Absolutely. You know, hopefully that disclaimer out there doesn't prevent me or hinder me from future employment opportunities. But essentially what I mean is, I think a lot of times the experience is amazing. So I think it's you're in a space and time of life, as you know, to where all we do is read, write, and engage in intellectual discourse. And we're pushing each other. We're learning about, you know, how education was shaped over the years, how, you know, different things and different theories and different things interconnect into the world that we live. So in one sense, it's fascinating, right? Mm-hmm. You know, on the outside looking in, it's fascinating because it gives you that access to just read unfiltered and, you know, really just think about things at its deepest, most fundamental, foundational levels. So in that sense, it's amazing, I think. But the reality of being in a PhD program, being, you know, one of a few Black males in the program, which is a reality in a lot of big, you know, research programs, you know, it's not oftentimes a lot of diversity as one would hope for. You know, our program at UConn is unique in the sense of, with our advisor, Dr. Joseph Cooper, shout out to him. Mm-hmm. You know, he's brought in a lot of different diversity with a lot of different skill sets unique to help us push, you know, academia and a lot of the things that we're doing forward. But it is frustrating because I think oftentimes, you're reading, for full transparency, you're reading a lot of dense material, but then as a black male, we're now connecting it to our community. And, I always tell people I'm in this to not only benefit the academy, but more so benefit my community. So when you're reading about, stereotypes that black males and black people and other communities of color, deal with, is frustrating. You're seeing like, oh wow, all of these things systemically has happened and it plagues us, whether it's testing anxiety that has happened because throughout, documented research, documented, educational systems, we're inferior, intellectually inferior. We were all of these different things. So then you start reading the research and you're like, wow, I had no idea that it was just a genre of material in academic, published papers that literally is dissing my community. So I think the frustrating aspect, and I know we're going to talk about mental health and all of those things a little bit later, but that's what has been the frustrating aspect, because you have people who are deemed the creme de la creme, or the guardians of the ivory tower, who are publishing things based on their vantage point. But then you start reading it and it's skewed. You're like, you all are not really, in our community doing X, Y, and Z with us. You all are not really, engaged in the actual work. So just because you can publish a paper, it doesn't necessarily mean you care about the community. Absolutely. And just because you documented, 5 or 10 students doesn't mean that you can generalize that. And then, as we know, it's generalized in the media, and so I think that's been just a more frustrating aspect. A lot of times it gets daunting, just from a lot of ways, because it seems as though you're in the fight and you're trying to convince people who are strategically writing against you in its most academic sense for your failure. And I think that trickles down into, K through 12 systems. It obviously trickles into, with black males having the lowest graduation rates in college.
Absolutely.
So you're reading things, and then we could come out with some real tangible solutions. But at times I think the academy is just like, I feel your solutions. I mean, I don't know if we're going to put financial resources to it in most cases, or we're going to actually try to sustain certain models over a period of 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And then, but hey, you all come up with some things that you all feel that your community needs. But then we're going to have these other seniored or tenured folks that then could just dispel the things that you're saying. So
I think you jump on a large point, which becomes the idea of the academy, where it is about producing research and debunking other individuals' ideas.
For sure.
And that becomes very, very challenging, because if I produce work that I feel like this is the best practice, and specifically in these certain communities and taking other spaces, there is an individual out there that has decided that their work is about telling me that this is wrong, that this is not going to work, that this is not equitable. Sure. And specifically because they look at the whole issue in totality. And it's, as opposed to saying, well, if I have 80% of my population may be white, and so I produce a program, but it disenfranchises individuals from marginalized communities, first generations. And so that becomes just a kind of ongoing battle where you're going to conferences and it's like, I know that I have to defend what I have to say, as opposed to working in a very strategic business oriented way, where let's try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we can make tweaks to it. You almost have to justify sometimes the work, and even justify the levels of the work. So from an academic standpoint, I may have a theory, and the theory is so layered, and you have to work to almost justify your opinion with the right theory, or create new theory. And even create new theory sometimes pushes individuals away to say, you know what, this is not empirical work yet. And so someone else has to then put this through the academy, throw it through the ringer, throw it through the washing machine, and decide what comes back out. And that becomes, I say, complicated as a minority and trying to produce work. It's like, how do we get to a point of creating articles, even if that's something you're interested in? That's something you're interested in?
Oh, no, I'm definitely interested in creating articles. I think a lot of times so I always say with the tagline, and one of my mentors, Dr. Jason Irizarry, at the University of Connecticut, he's one of those where I first heard that. So let me cite my source and say that I'm in the academy, but not of the academy, because that came from one of my one-on-ones with Dr. Jason Irizarry. But so I'm definitely interested in, publishing work. I think it's value. So it's always going to have value. I always say, though, just that tagline for me in the academy, but not of the academy, it's, my traditional way of me going in an entrepreneurial taking an entrepreneurial path, going into the classroom and being about the work, right? So not really thinking about things from a theoretical framework and conceptual models, just literally making an observation that, wow, students are disengaged in the classroom. Students are are being isolated, or technology is rampant, and there's so much social media influences. So how do you take some of those the modern technology and use it in a way to inspire students? So wanting to publish in one sense is real, but then also not losing sight of the right here and the right now. And I think within publishing things, I always say, as much as I want to publish, there's amazing researchers and scholars out there that I've already I have a different void that I'm going to fill, and I could have the nuances to different articles to interject Michael Mallery's voice.
Counter narrative.
You know what I mean? But there's so much phenomenal work, whether it's culturally, relevant pedagogy, culturally sustaining pedagogies. There's, Afrocentricity. There's so many different things that say, hey, students of color, whether they're male, they're females, whatever the case, these type pedagogies within the classroom, centering students' identities, voices, a reality pedagogy with Dr. Chris Emden from Columbia, whatever. There's so many just amazing articles out there that if educators or systems said, you know what, that makes sense. Like if I'm a black male in New Haven, but from a culture climate perspective, nothing in my school looks like me, not a poster, maybe not educators who look like me, I can write a paper that says, XYZ school in New Haven, in a city in New England, in New Haven, Connecticut, I did this subset of students who identify as black or African American or as Caribbean or whatever the case may be. And, I went through, focus groups, and I conducted all of these different things. And these students suggested that, hey, the only reason why I'm disengaged from the classroom is because nothing in this building looks like me, or the teachers who are in front of the classroom don't look like me, or they don't understand my culture. So even if I'm using a slang, this slang is not to be offensive. It's just because they're not in my community. I can write a phenomenal piece like that. But I also can say that, what is that piece going to do if the power players in the school or in the school districts are saying like, oh, wow, I appreciate that. But no, actually, this researcher who's more tenured and more senior said, yeah, we actually don't need that. Students just need more discipline.
I got
You see what I'm saying? I feel like that's where I want to publish, and there's so much value, especially for peers and people in the fight. But there's just also some real things that I just feel like are ignored that has been published since Brown was the Board of Education.
Absolutely. I was thinking, as you said that, so a lot of the work that we do, we find articles. We don't really use too many textbooks.
For sure.
And so how do you feel about looking at curriculum that looks at high school curriculum that looks at using case studies or using empirical articles and moving away from textbooks? Because I think as individuals are intervening with the work that, or trying to understand what they're trying to understand, it's like it creates more meaning in the classroom sometimes when they produce articles that are topic based, or whether it be about social justice, innovation, technology. And so instead of them kind of reading this textbook that kind of creates these kind of narratives that probably existed in the past and kind of give you a historical context so that we can get to contemporary, like changing the whole curriculum and moving away from the textbooks and giving them those empirical articles, I think it benefits us more, because when we have to go to the lit reviews, it's take the lit review and you help me extend your critical thinking about where we are right now.
No, absolutely. But then once again, that's a more being in the academy but not of the academy. To me, that's a commonsensical approach. So okay, whoever wrote these textbooks, I'm sure they're tenured. That was part of their tenure package. So like, I need to crank out some edited textbooks, put it in the school system, even if some of these textbooks in certain communities are outdated. But I remember doing a PD, a professional development workshop. I was given an opportunity in Hartford, Connecticut, to talk with some educators. Right now, I've done a lot of consultancy in classrooms and been impacted over 100,000 students, and just being able to engage with students, teachers across the country. I remember saying, so if you know that the books that you all have is outdated, but you're talking about, okay, but no, the state wants us to, do these certain things to impact it, to increase literacy rates, to prepare these students for this. I said, well, how about you bring in via articles, via web articles that are relevant to these different students, right? Be it certain academic literature that I believe a lot of these students could potentially read. And you just make it relevant to who they are, what they're doing, what their experience has been in their life thus far. And I said, you implement that into your classroom. There's a lot of articles for history. English, for certain aspects in math and science. You can pull so many cool things that these students will say, wow,
Yes.
I'm actually reading, as you know, whether it's in sports, there's dope articles featuring LeBron James, but it's an empirical article.
Yep.
So now kids are able to see that you're reading something that is not only highly interested to you, but now you connect with. By reading that, I'm sure that's going to increase
participation.
It's going to increase engagement. It's going to increase your verbal your verbal sense of your words, etc. Is going to increase your critical discussion, because there's certain aspects of questions that's within this article that then could get them to say, well, if this researcher is asking these questions that guided their study, what are some of my own questions?
Absolutely.
And it was kind of, well, we don't have money for printing. And that was a real thing. But it wasn't like but this makes sense. It was just dismissed because we don't have any outside resources for printing to bring these things in the classroom, which then said, well, essentially we are just engaged in educational genocide, because we're just going to keep a curriculum that students are not engaged with.
Absolutely.
But then we're going to be mad at them and call them a low-performing school.
Low performance, suspended. Turnaround schools. So
that's the commonsensical aspect that I really struggle with. There's cool research, there's cool things out there when it comes to curriculum-based things that brilliant minds at district levels either are being complicit in just keeping things the way they are, or just saying, actually, I get that you said you should put in certain academics and pull out things that could enrich these students from certain communities that they can connect with, but that's just not how our school district operates. And if they don't do it the way that we want to do it, which I thought education was all about finding ways to help students connect the dots to their own
spheres,
their own spheres, versus dictating to them what they have to do. So, and if they don't do it that way, then we're just going to expel you. We're going to suspend you. We're going to send you to these alternative schools, or we're just going to contribute to truancy rates and all of these other things and say, you know what? If you don't want to do it our way, then just find yourself outside the school.
So on that point, I had a great weekend. Ended up going to the Higher Heights 15th a banquet. They did an excellent job acknowledging their acknowledging their students, and as they're making plans to make this college journey. It was excellent. Dr. Shackelfelder did a great job creating affirmations, and there was this moment of when the kids got awarded, they lined them up in a circle and had their parents come around them, and then she gave a speech just talking about you are loved and the community is around you, and understanding that a lot of that is for what we kind of perceive. That's what our work is, and I think that I've never been able. I think we call it work, but sometimes I feel like we have a social justice mission that I think has kind of been more ingrained in some of the practices. And again, not getting back to talking about practical work and feeling like I'm trying to solve a problem through the research that we create and not just look at it from a lens and trying to be an observer. And so they did a great job of acknowledging the future project. When we talk about hip hop pedagogy, Dr. Sawyer got up there from Quinnipiac and talked about including that in the curriculums and relating with the students, because I walk into a lot of the schools and I see that the kids are not here. They're present in the room. They're looking, and every classroom sometimes seems like recess for them, and that they're building social relationships, but they're not attached to the curriculum. And I've tried to figure out, how do we intervene? And so I know for you and me, as we talk a lot about it, how sports has been our connection,
for sure,
has created these moments. And so then even you kind of giving your sports experience, and as it relates to the academy, I think that there's no way attaching. And when I see sports, I think about just extracurricular activities and finding private funding and philanthropy that is so interested in putting these things back into the schools, when the schools say, well, I don't have paper, I don't have resources, I can't pay for staff, but it's necessary, because just the grunt of just reading and writing do not become like pleasing for the students at this point in life, because we're in a contemporary era where they have social media.
No, absolutely. And I think that's everyone can connect, whether it's Dr. Sonia as it pertains to the hip hop pedagogy. That's what I mentioned, Dr. Chris Emden and others who have the whole, hip hop education movement out there in the world. When it comes to, what Dr. Joseph Cooper does, right? With holistic development and doing these, what we're doing, right? Engaging and trying to bridge the gap between academic, athletic, race, culture, all of these cool things that students are engaged in, whether they're active participants or they come from a school district that doesn't have the resources and the funds, but they're still engaging with it through social media, engaging with it through, March Madness, engaging with it. So there's so many cool ways to still esports, right? Which is the phenomenon that's taken over in so many different ways to still help and connect students to these different phenomena that's happening. But I think the unfortunate reality is, as we're building or attempting to build, these relationships, are trying to get philanthropists to come in and donate from things that should be a requirement or staples within academic and academic culture, which once again I struggle with, because the research already suggests and has already validated this. If you want qualitative studies on it, the qualitative studies are out there. If you want quantitative studies on that, the quantitative. If you want mixed methods that include both of them, they're out there. But so that's where I think for me, where I connected spiritually, but also connected from a real moral perspective. What are we doing with these students? We have the data. So, and once again, me and you are about to head to a conference and present on Black activism and do all of these things at the University of South Carolina this week. But once again, we're talking about education. We're talking about different models that have already been proven, but yet states across the country, and this is not specific to a Connecticut or where I'm from, Louisiana. This is all across the country. States are continuing to divest from education.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, you listen to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting from downtown New Haven, streaming live on TuneIn Radio or www.newhavenindependent.org, or stream live on Facebook Live. You can find the page at www.facebook.com, New Haven Independent. This is Don McAulay here, filling in for Tom Ficklin, and my special guest, Michael Mallery from the University of Connecticut. We're having a great time just talking about what it means to kind of engage in this journey. I brought up higher heights as an important kind of transition, is that in thinking about the students and what their undergrad is going to be like and what they should look forward to. I could speak to that in terms of what your undergrad experience was.
Reframe the question for me.
So the students at higher heights pretty much are now either accepting scholarships or looking for scholarships to go into school. So they should be freshmen next year.
For sure.
And sometimes they don't necessarily know what that next journey is going to be. And it's kind of good to say, this is going to be the next thing you're going to love 4 years, or you may not love 4 years. Your experience can be distinctly different depending on where you are, what's going on in life, how you adapt to the curriculum.
For sure.
And so kind of speak to what was your undergrad like? Your undergrad academic experience, athletic experience, or just being a freshman on campus?
Right. So, man, great question. So for me, I went to a historically Black college, university, Southern University, and A&M College, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, home to the #1 band in the land, the Human Jukebox. Got to shout out that plug. But USA Today actually did rate us the #1 band in America. So I just want to put that out there. But so my first year, I kind of was going through my whole aspect, having affiliation with the basketball team, trying to give basketball a go. I still was very passionate about the game of basketball. Ended up injuring myself within workouts. So for me, early on within that my college career, I realized that my basketball aspirations and dreams was going to be cut short. So it didn't happen for me. So like most freshmen, though, making the transition, I'm thinking, wow, you hear all the stories. You want to go there. It's about time management. It's about all of these different things, from a transitional aspect that I needed to start looking forward to. But you come from being a senior in high school, you're the big fish. Now you go into a collegiate space, and you have professors, you have, Greek life. You have all of these different, components that make up, the college experience. And my first year, I struggled trying to just transition to, going from semester to semester with 5 classes, trying to balance, not knowing that I might have not, I shouldn't have probably taken 5 classes or calculus and physics and biology, AP biology, all in the same semester, right? I wasn't, emotionally, ready to make that transition, but once again, I didn't know that was something that I should, ask about, like, hey, what's a good load for me to transition into? But college for me was amazing, and I think it's an exciting time to learn about yourself. It's a learning time. It's an amazing time to, learn about you know, being open to the possibilities of learning about new foods, new cultures, new experiences, learning a lot about yourself when you literally are away from home. It doesn't matter if you go 45 minutes away from home, as I did in Louisiana, or some people who travel across the state. I learned a lot about myself. What I said, it was kind of my beginning of transitioning into real manhood. Like, how can I navigate and cope with all of the emotions, the mental fatigue of trying to do well in class, but then being disengaged from class if it was certain professors, or being in a class size in an auditorium with 100 people in a gym class, you know. But being a man, having masculinity issues, I didn't know the term masculinity back then, but you know, kind of coming from my culture, coming from inner city, and saying, oh wow, it's about me. Like, I don't need to ask for help. Men don't ask for help. And yeah, that was a real thing that I struggled with. So I was the student after midterms and things, you know, having to go to the professor, like, is there any extra credit work I can do? You know, I'm not used to making these type of grades, C's or low B's or whatever the case. I wasn't used to doing that. But once again, I wasn't accustomed to having to ask for help, because once I hit my sweet spot in high school, sometimes I studied, sometimes I didn't, because it came natural to me. So I thought college was going to be was going to replicate that same experience for me. But as I got older and I started matriculating, and I started finding my thing, I switched my major. I went from engineering. I was doing mechanical engineering, and I thought that's what I wanted to be. But that's what my parents wanted at the time. It was like, hey, no, engineers make a lot of money. And I do think a lot of engineers do make money, but some engineers don't make a lot of money, you know? So it was all of these preconceived notions. You better go and you better major in something that's going to do this. And I don't care what you like. I'm telling you to major in this. And it wasn't until my third year, going into my third year, I was like, you know what? I love business.
Yep.
I want to major in, I want to do something that makes me happy. And it's the day that I transferred and I said, I'm going to stop living for my parents. I'm going to stop living for everyone else. I'm going to do something that makes me happy. That's when I was able to, like, really dominate college in a way, graduate with honors, graduate with all of these different things, because I finally found something that spoke to me, and I wasn't reading other articles or listening to other family members. And that's where my grit and my grind came. So it was an amazing experience. But I think a lot of the students who are going to be transitioning, those are things you need to start asking yourself right now. Like, am I about to major in something that my family wants me to major in? You know, I know, you know, just as a mentor and an advisor for, you know, a lot of my Caribbean students, we don't have a large Caribbean population in Louisiana, but me coming up here, a lot of my Caribbean mentees that I've had, they come from cultural dynamics that say you better major in engineering, medicine,
something that make money,
and something that makes money. If you try to do anything else, so me learning about, you know, and being able to give advice to students within their transition, you know, I think that's something that a lot of these students, you're going to have an amazing experience. You're going to be able to transition and learn and grow and evolve and adapt. You know, hopefully you seek out the tutoring from day one, but also knowing that you still have to grow into who you are and really start listening to your true passions and your true gifts, and say, okay, if I'm going to be in a space for 4 years, and if I'm going to be paying for this, or even if I have a scholarship, I know you're going to want to create and keep your scholarship. It's how do I, you know, navigate and identify myself with a circle of people that we can go to the parties together, but we also can wake up and go to the library together, and we can push each other so we all can graduate and then transition into life, you know, post, your undergrad year in college. So
whoever's listening, that just please share this with your student that have aspirations of just even these same tools still work at the high school level. But again, the college experience is, as you put it, learning about yourself. And one of the key parts about learning about yourself is kind of understanding the campus and being able to decipher what is for you and what is not for you.
Sure.
So I think a lot of freshmen will comport themselves and kind of conform to whatever this school is. So if there's a lot of parties, I'm going to go to a lot of parties. And sometimes it may be a reflection of what your high school experience was, or the lack of. And so thinking really through a lot of those things, and I think about as I work with the students, the freshmen that come in the Academic Achievement Center, and I think, wow, when I was a freshman, what was I doing? And I remember getting my first microeconomics test, and I thought I aced it. I walked out just smiling, but like, it was quick. I was like, I probably was in there for maybe an hour-long class. I was probably 30 minutes. Like, I'm done with this test. Handed it in. Everybody, you good? Like, I'm good. Like, walk on. How'd you do? I'm good. A week later, that was an F or a D, and I'm like, what part of the curriculum did I miss?
For sure.
Like, I thought I answered every question right. I read through every question. And so you kind of, it was a trial and error moment where it's like, nah, I'm gonna get the next time. I'm gonna study a little bit hard. So I still didn't go ask for no assistance yet. So I go to the next one, and do it again. And I can't. I just don't. So it was sometimes it's those issues that you don't ask for assistance.
For sure.
And you may be a first gen student, and I say the importance of considering a first gen student is because I heard it at the banquet, and someone says you owe it to your parents not to fail.
Oh, absolutely.
And in some parts it's like they got to give it twofold. It's because you can't get, sometimes you can't kind of give that level of pressure that if you don't do this, you've disappointed me. And sometimes understanding what the burden is of to be on campus and deal with the mental fatigue, deal with a breakup, deal with something that's happening back home with family, and thinking that me being on this campus right here, if I fail, then somehow no one else in my family will go to school, or my family's going to feel disappointed that I somehow have not contributed to the educational advancement, or what future holds is what economic mobility would have been if I got my degree. And so putting in two lights is that we love and care about all the things that you do. And you're not perfect. And so we're here to support whatever you're doing.
Absolutely.
Understand that there are challenges, but it's hard for someone to say, you owe it to your family to make this happen, and they ain't never been there. So
For
it's
sure.
like, yeah, I'm like, that's a difficult way.
And I think that's how I define adulthood. Anyone who knows me, I always say the way that I define being a man, the way that I define adulthood is the ability to separate emotion versus logic. And that's when I kind of reference me changing from engineering, where I was doing decent, but I wasn't passionate about it. I was getting my butt kicked because people were like, you better go and you better handle your business, and it shouldn't be that difficult. They wasn't thinking about all of these other things, but it wasn't until I realized, wow, emotionally, and all of the students that's going to be transitioning into college, emotionally, I can tell you right now, your family loves you. Absolutely. Emotionally, they want you to do well. They want you to succeed. Emotionally, a lot of parents, they are trying to give you opportunities that themselves never was able to have, you know, whether it's through college, if you are first gen and you're the first one going to. Emotionally, it's definitely pressure, but just think about it from an emotional context. You just have all of these things to sacrifice, all of those things, those meals that you didn't know about when you were in high school and middle school, and you was like, dang, the lights is on. Every time I wake up, the lights is on, and I got hot water, and I got all of these different things. So the emotion is there, but logically, I think what began to free me in a lot of ways was logically, my family are those individuals. They wasn't with me in college shooting in the gym. Yeah. So they didn't understand the type of professors and the microaggressions, and they didn't understand how class could be, you know, overwhelming sometimes. They didn't know how a lot of times that mental health within, you know, all college students, but especially in our communities, is on an all-time high. You know, suicide rates are at an all-time high. You know, the cultural factors from a logical perspective of knowing how masculinity issues, especially for men, we're taught that we better provide and we better do all of these different things, whether it's prematurely or a real reality because you're the first one to go to college. But once I began to get older and understand the logical things is, well, logically, my family is not taking these classes with me. So maybe they are pushing me to engineering because in their mind, they're just saying, I don't want my kid to struggle in a career that might not pay as much. So I'm trying to push them, but they're not logically thinking about, but if this is not something I care about by the least, then I'm probably going to struggle even more. And I'm not going to be a great engineer because you want me to be a great engineer. I just don't want to be a great engineer because that's just not what I'm passionate about. You know, or medicine, or I might just, you know, for me, I would say engineering, I was passionate about the intellectual, you know, aspects of things and certain design, but at the time, math wasn't my strong suit. But I ran into, just by the luck of the draw, some individuals from other countries ended up, you know, landing some positions, and they came to my university. My university engineering partner had this complete, like, shake-up. And 3 professors that I came, they said, hey, the country that I come from, we learned statistics and math when we were in middle school and high school. So if you don't know it, drop my class. So as a 19-year-old,
you hear that, you're like,
I hear that. So that's the only reason why. And then I heard that in 3 different classes, back to back to back. And so a lot of other individuals dropped classes, but that made me, so it wasn't like oh man, I'm going to prove you wrong. I was just a 19-year-old, the first one who was trying to pursue something that my family had no idea about, but heard some articles that, hey, this is what you should major in. But they didn't understand mentally what that did to be vulnerable with a professor to say, hey, I'm really trying to do my best. And they just look at you and say, hey, that's not my problem. I learned this in 8th grade and in high school. So if you don't know it, drop my class. You're not ever going to be a good engineer. So for me, so that's why I say just the logical aspects, though, I think to make the rest of the story short, emotionally, parents and people love you. They rooting for you. They want you to do well. And when you don't do well, their emotions are just trying to say, hey, you need to work harder. You know, we're sacrificing, but that's coming from an emotional place. The logical aspect is, hey, you have to begin to learn how to make your own decisions. That's what college is going to do for you. You know, you have to begin to logically understand that. Well, although mom might have went to college, but her college experience was before social media and technology came out. Okay. So they can't even connect with what does this. They think that, well, you all have Google. It should be 1,000% easier. But they don't understand all of the other distractions and the other things that come with technology, or it comes with being, you know, if some student, like I went to a historically black college. So for me, though, although I struggled, I had cultural empowerment, reinforcement daily from professors, from support staff, from custodian, from everybody. Going to the University of Connecticut, I'm glad you yourself we're able to serve that role in the capacity. Yeah. But oftentimes students don't have that. So that's another logical thing that, so you're saying like, yes, I got into an Ivy League. Yes. Or I got into, you know, the flagship school in my university, in my state. But if there's not resources, like real resources to help you deal with all those other things, that also can hinder you and have an impact to your grades, to your mental health, to all of the things that you're doing. And I think that's the aspect that logically more students transition into college need to know how to sift and seek out help, but also just knowing that logically parents won't be able to understand the framework
that the school is in.
That the school is, and the school has at that moment.
That's the important moments. I think about these college prep programs, and I remember taking a lot of AP exams, but also thinking about now that we teach and we have students, that we're able to understand the unique dynamic, and also when you have a supporting professor that's kind of supports the work, and honestly, just certain strategies for students sitting in the front of the class, asking questions, having the confidence to raise your hand, ask a critical question, or try to answer a very complex question and get it wrong. Absolutely. And then continue to keep that same level of energy and just ask the question. And most individuals are so hesitant, and I can see someone will ask a question and no one will raise their hand. And I'm like, I know somebody here knows the answer. Someone else doesn't know the answer. So either in totality, either you guys all don't know. And so, I mean, I need to change the content. So you give me a level of feedback, or you know it, so we can kind of move on and create a level or extend the level of critical consciousness on the context we're talking about, because we know that everybody knows this. And so how do we dive deeper? And those become the strategies to helping individuals matriculate into that first year of saying, I know how to take notes, I know how to manage my time. And so I remember one student came in the room and I had to write down his whole schedule, and I had him rate his classes by difficulty and where he thought he was in the course based on what his power school looked like. And he was taking 5 classes, but he was describing all these classes as 1 in terms of difficulty out of 5. And he's like 1, 1, 1, but he had C's in the class. So I'm like, if the class is easy and you're getting C's, there's a disconnect. For sure. Because and I think the most empowering thing that I saw once was that a kid rated a class of 5 and he had an A in it. And so it lets me, like, either you know the tools to get the grade, but when you kind of think that the class is simple, or it's not enough class, or understanding the format of the class, whether it be papers, whether it be lab results, whether it be conversation, it's very difficult to get a poor grade when you're the only one participating. And at the end of the day, everybody in the class pretty much is sometimes nervous and pretty much naive to what the professor's actually looking for, because sometimes it's difficult to sit up there when you feel like are they listening? So when someone's engaged, like, the professor want to know that you engage in the content, because he's not producing it just cause. Absolutely. So I think about that, but I know you work in the business school. So one of the things I want to talk about to the freshmen, I think we talked about it on the when we were at a retreat once, student loans. Yes. In terms of paying them off, but what in terms of educating them from your perspective on what should you take out in terms of, like, you take out $10,000 and you feel like you need it, but you're really gonna go have some extra discretionary funds so you can go buy a car or whatever the situation may be, but at least advising the listeners and the students that are listening about what it means to take these loans out. And then also, as you, someone that has paid your stuff off, absolutely, like in an excellent time frame, what does that mean?
So, as everyone knows, over $1.5 trillion are attributed to student loan debt in America right now. And unfortunately, when I mentioned earlier, just the aspect of a lot of states divesting from education, college tuition is going to continue to rise, for better or for worse. It's going to continue to rise. It's a complete monopoly right now. Not only is it going to continue to rise, the amount of money and access is going to continue to rise as well. So the one thing that I've learned, I would tell parents out there, and I would even tell students, the first thing you should be, if you're a college senior right now, if you got your admittance letters and you, hooray, 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 the first thing you need to do right now is figure out what is that admissions packet that you have, right? How much money is the school that you're going to? How much are they giving you? How much are they giving you? What are the requirements that you need to keep and maintain to keep whatever financial, whether it's grants, whether it's scholarships? Is it a one-year scholarship? Is it just a fall semester moving into your freshman year scholarship? Is it 4 years scholarship? So when you really need it on pen, on paper, on an Excel sheet, on the note section of your cell phone, you need to literally say, what type of money am I getting from the school or schools that I got admitted into? Then secondly, you need to really ask yourself, is the school that I'm going to, is it a dream school? Is it a real school? Is it a school that I just want to go to because I have a couple friends from my high school going, so I just want to continue to be with my best friend because, you know, we were in high school and we're doing all of these different things. To condense that is really saying, why am I going to the school that I'm going to, and is it worth potentially anywhere between going in-state and paying $15,000, $20,000 a year, going to an Ivy League, potentially paying $40,000, $60,000 a year, going out of state and just paying out of state fees? You know, are you going to the school because they just have a phenomenal basketball and football team?
The front porch institution.
You know, is it because they have an arcade in their student union and you're like, wow, it would just be cool to have an arcade? Is it because, you know, because the real reality is there are over 10 million, 15 million Americans right now just in student loan default. They just like, I can't make any of these payments, right? So that's the, after the 18 to 22-year-old made decisions, right? The 25 to 30, 35, 40-year-old you was like, dang, I probably should have just went to a reasonable school to just get my undergrad degree because I could have still had a high quality education. I could have used social media to connect with other people at other institutions to still build networks and connections at other universities, but I wouldn't have to come out of school. Like myself, I came out of college, $35,000 of student loan debt. And you know why I came out of with $35,000 student loan debt? Because I wanted to stay off campus. And I was like, yo, it'd be cool to just pay my rent for a year. So I'm going to take out the max. I didn't have any financial person in financial aid saying, hey, you actually don't need to take out the max. They were like, you want to take out the max? This is the max amount of money you can get. And I was like, word, sign me up. Refund check time. But it was unnecessary. I was able to grip my way through internships.
That's actually the same time that every vendor shows up on campus.
Every vendor. Now, I didn't get a credit card, thankfully. I didn't need to do that. But I literally was like, oh, this is the max? Word. I just wanted to do frivolous things with this money instead of using it for what, or take out the least amount to cover my tuition, cover my books, and just say, hey, everything else I'm going to figure out and I'm going to find out. So that's the one thing I would say. I'm like so passionate about student loan debt right now because there's so many people that are surviving or are trying to navigate this space and place in life right now because they've taken out a mass number of loans. And unfortunately, so many institutions that you go to are not going to give you it's not a required elective for personal finance. How do you responsibly pay back your student loans? Don't go buy a new car once you graduate because a new car payment, in addition to a student loan payment, in addition to a rent payment, in addition to whatever it may be, might lead to the demise and might lead you to do more financially irresponsible things.
Because you might be like dealing with like 15% interest rates combined on everything that you're dealing
with. On everything that you're dealing with. So that's the first thing I would say. And I would honestly say to the parents that are listening out there to really have a smart conversation with your students. I'm not saying that going and paying for college is a bad thing. We've all been there. But the price for certain institutions, in my personal opinion, especially if students are, the way trends are now, an undergrad degree in a lot of ways is like a high school degree. So students are going to have to go get a master's or go get a doctorate or something to that capacity. I would say that first degree, why go into $60,000 to $80,000 of debt for an undergrad degree to only go $60,000 to $80,000 or $30,000 to $60,000 in debt for a master's degree?
Mm-hmm.
So I say all that to say, I think that's something that I'm passionate about, but it's also something, a real thing when it comes to financial packages, is come to being able to really look at that and have an honest conversation with your student, or for students to have a real honest conversation with themselves to say, you know what, I really want to go to this school, but at the end of the day, it's not where you go, is what you do where you go. And I think that's been my story of my life. I went to a historically black college. It empowered me in certain ways. You know, although I took out student loans, it was a fraction of what some of the students at bigger universities are doing. And for me, that ultimately, you know, allowed me to, once I figured it out and I was in an environment that allowed me to figure out me, myself, and my identity, has been, you know, the reality and the things that have helped me, you know, just succeed in life based on not being in a crazy financial pit, you know, going into a real life.
So I know we got the sign that we need to start wrapping it up. Obviously, this sounds like an unfinished conversation, so I think that Tom's probably going to give me a call to say we could finish this later on. But obviously, Michael Mallery's here to give us some quality information, and it's good that we finished up on finances for students. I know there's a lot more to unpack in that conversation, but we appreciate being able to come here today and Tom giving us the space to talk about it. The students actually need to hear this quality information,
Sure.
and there's so many different things that go on. I say right now we're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of just discussing everything that's going on, but we hope to get the opportunity to come back and finish this conversation and finish the dialogue. I appreciate you coming up.
Definitely.
And I feel that there's probably gonna be another opportunity for us to finish this narrative. But again, is there anything else you want to?
So I would just say, continue to work hard, continue to surround yourself with people that enhance your life and not waste your time, and just ultimately know that as you continue to navigate in life, asking for help is a powerful thing, not a deficit, you know, and it doesn't, you know, it's not a sign of weakness. So just continue to believe in the impossible, continue to dream bigger than ever, but also know that the amount of work that you put in is not only going to be determined by the strategies and things that you connect with, but ultimately, you know, that you know, truly believing in yourself and surrounding yourself with just that circle of people that's going to continue to push you to heights that, you know, most people around the world are not able to get to.
There you go. You listen to the Tom Ficklin Show on 103.5, broadcasting from downtown New Haven, stream live on New Haven Independent, www.newhavenindependent.org. And this is Don McAulay signing out. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle.
Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle.
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'm on roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing.